Good afternoon, folks. This is the lecture for CRIM 202, Corrections and Sentencing. This is the lecture on parole. I keep in mind that this is, obviously at this point in the semester I had to move some lectures around. We would have been beginning the presentations for this week, and I'm begging you guys to understand that, there are no presentations anymore. Nobody's working in groups anymore. You don't have to do any group work during this. So, congratulations. But that assignment got converted to a final paper. Next week, I'm literally not doing a lecture just so I can explain the directions one more time and just so you guys can put time into that paper that is due in, I forget the exact date, it should be the second week of May. Please just know that, again, there's no presentations right now, but next week I'm going to be giving you the directions for what has now become a final paper. For this week, we are talking about parole. This is a supplement or kind of a part two to the last time that I did a lecture summary where I was talking about probation. Probation and parole are very similar to each other in that their supervision is almost identical. The conditions of release are almost identical. But again, the major distinctions: probation is before incarceration with a sentence dangling over your head if you violate. Parole is after imprisonment. So keep in mind, truth in sentencing laws say that throughout the United States, a person has to finish at least 85% of their sentence before they are paroled. The word parole literally means promise. The word parole was originally used to describe prisoners of war and their promise not to engage in war again. So in that sense, parole is a promise not to engage in war, or a promise not to engage in criminal activity again. And so this is what parole is about. Not everyone can be given that promise. Not everybody's paroled because they haven't earned good behavior. Usually that's based on your institutional record. Usually that's based on the concerns of the victims, the concerns of the community, whether or not you can be released early. If you are released early, paroled, you will be given a condition of release. Same thing as probation. Usually it involves a curfew. Usually you have to stay drug and alcohol free. Usually you have to be looking for a job. Pretty much the exact same stuff. Parole officer, same as a probation officer, can enter your home without a warrant. Usually carries a gun and handcuffs sometimes. Usually has a pretty large caseload of people. And, the parole officer's job, just like the probation officer's, to be half police officer, half social worker, because you're trying to get this person's life back together. And another thing that makes parole different is who makes those big decisions, and that's a parole board. Parole boards are not made of police officers or attorneys or corrections officers. They're made of representative community members so that they represent the interests of the community. And so it could be a teacher, it could be a janitor, it could be an attorney, it could be a social worker, but usually it's supposed to be a collective representation of the community and whether or not the community wants you back. Parole boards determine your eligibility, they determine whether or not you're released, and they also tend to determine your conditions of release, that list of things that you're supposed to be following. And so, fairly short lecture. I just want you to consider the things that go into being on a parole board and the things that go into that decision making. The victim has a lot of say at a parole hearing, which is unusual for our criminal justice system because victims are usually just witnesses. In this case, they can make their case that this person should not be allowed back in the community. So there's that. But parole is there for similar reasons as probation. Some people just don't deserve to be in prison anymore. So they are paroled. So that's why at the end there's different versions of parole. There's straight up parole, there's executive clemency, there's a commutation of one sentence where you actually change the length of somebody's sentence. Many versions of this, right? So please answer the discussion questions online. And for next week, I'm still going to be making a video, but the video is only going to be focusing on the directions for the final paper. So until then, I'll see you guys next week.